Hello, I'm John Rose, U.S. Representative for the 6th District of Tennessee. Today I'm coming to you from the campus of Tennessee Tech University, where 40 years ago I enrolled to study agribusiness economics. I thought this would be a great place to talk about the debt limit of the United States because it's in the classrooms on this campus that I learned the fundamentals of economics and gained a keen appreciation for why it's so important that this country pay its bills on time. So here are 6 things that you should know about the debt ceiling increase that faces this country. First of all, what is the debt ceiling? For many years, the Congress has put in place a ceiling on the amount of money that the country can borrow in order to pay its expenses. The last time the debt ceiling was increased actually was in December of 2021, when the largest increase ever made was implemented by the Congress at that time.
And the nays are 209. The joint resolution is passed.
$2.5 trillion, an incredible amount. And yet it took this administration just 13 months to reach that limit again. The Constitution puts this responsibility on the Congress, and in fact indicates that the House of Representatives should take the lead. And that's why I'm proud that under the leadership of Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we've passed a bill in the House to solve this problem. Second, what's in the Republican plan? Well, the first thing to keep in mind is when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is to put down the shovel and quit digging. And that's what Republicans are proposing. Some people would say this plan is extreme, but I would tell you that it's reasonable, responsible, and sensible. So the first step in this Republican plan is that we go back to the 2022 baseline for spending, just 4 months ago, really. And we say we're going to go back to that baseline, and for the next 10 years, we're only going to allow domestic discretionary spending to increase at a rate of 1% a year. A very reasonable approach that doesn't require cutting benefits to anyone, but simply limits the rate at which our federal spending increases. That alone, over the next 10 years, will save $3.6 trillion in reduced spending. Beyond this rollback to 2022 as the baseline, Republicans propose that we stop President Biden's proposed giveaway to some of the best off Americans through the college loan forgiveness program. That will save almost $500 billion. And for the 87% of Americans who don't have student loans and who would be paying for that 13%, who in many cases are some of the wealthiest Americans, I think that makes a great deal of sense. In addition to that, we propose to not fund the army of IRS agents that President Biden proposed and which was passed into law last year. That saves another $71 billion over 10 years. In addition to that, we propose changes to some of the federal benefit programs that, for example, would put in place reasonable work requirements for able-bodied Americans who are receiving SNAP benefits or other federal benefits like Medicaid. This will put America back to work, improving the productivity of the American country, the nation, American people, and reducing the costs that Americans incur every year through these federal benefit programs. We roll back the Green New Deal tax credits that President Biden has proposed that frankly would cost this country perhaps in excess of $1 trillion. Again, significant savings that we realize for the American people. So the combination of these proposals would not only increase the debt limit of the United States, but implement legislatively tremendous savings in terms of holding the line on spending. In other words, laying down that shovel and stopping the digging of the hole that we find ourselves in. But they would also encourage economic growth and an increase in tax revenues that would grow the economy and help us work our way out of the problem that we find ourselves in today. These proposals are no different than what every American, every Tennessean would do if they maxed out their credit card. You'd look carefully at your expenses and you'd think about the priorities that your family has, and you'd make reasonable cuts to live within your means. And that's what Republicans are proposing with the Limit, Save, Grow Act. A third question that many people ask is, what will these changes mean to those Americans who depend on services or benefits that they receive from the federal government? And the answer is these changes are being made so that those who rely on critical benefits like Social Security and Medicare can rest assured that the government will be in a position to continue to make those payments. In fact, if we don't deal with this credit limit increase, many of those benefits might be in jeopardy. A fourth question that people ask is, how did we get here? Well, it's a good question, and it's a fair question because just in December of last year, 2022, we passed an omnibus budget for the 2023 fiscal year. At the time we passed that budget, Democrats were in control of all of government. And we were already at 99.9% of the credit limit of this country, and yet they proceeded to dramatically increase federal spending, knowing that we were a mere number of days away from reaching the credit limit of this country. It took us a long time to dig the hole that we're in. And we can't just turn the whole country around on a dime. And so Republicans are proposing a reasonable first step, that we limit the growth of future spending, that we carve back some of the spending proposals that this administration has recklessly made over the last many months, and we start the long path toward getting this country back on a firm financial foundation. A fifth point that I would mention is that you're going to hear the president and Democrats who are demagoguing on the issue say that Republicans are putting the nation at risk by asking for these reasonable budget cuts in the face of a debt limit increase. What I would say to you is that this is nothing new in Washington. The last 8 times Washington has seriously addressed spending, it has been on the occasion of a debt limit increase. And in fact, our current president has bragged in the past about being part of those negotiations in previous debt limit increase debates. And so this is not new. This is actually the exact time that we should be tackling this problem. The sixth thing I want you to know is what comes next. You know, I've got a 2-year-old son named Sam. And like most 2-year-olds, occasionally he wants his way, and when he doesn't get it, he'll throw a temper tantrum. And frankly, that's what I think President Biden is doing now by refusing to negotiate. He knows that the way forward is to sit down with Speaker Kevin McCarthy, with Democrats, with Republicans at the table, and find a solution that puts this country in a position to move forward on a firm financial foundation. You know, last year, the American people elected a majority for Republicans in the U.S. House, giving us the divided government that we have today. And I think it was the wish of the American people in so doing that they wanted us to come together and negotiate on important issues like the debt ceiling. So as Republicans, we've provided a path forward. We've passed a bill that increases the debt limit of this country, ensures that we'll continue to pay our bills, and most importantly, ensures that Americans will continue to be able to rely on the benefits they expect from the federal government. The ball is in President Biden's court. If he fails to act, if he continues his stubborn resistance to negotiating, this could likely roil the markets and risks the default on our national debt. So if you're worried about that, you need to reach out to President Biden and say, Mr. President, it's time to negotiate. It's time to either pass the Republican plan or propose one of your own that allows this country to move forward and get its financial house in order. When I graduated from Tennessee Tech 35 years ago, I had no idea that I would one day represent the good people of the 6th District of Tennessee in the U.S. House. But I'm thankful for the lessons that I learned here and the position that you've afforded me to represent you in Congress and take our Tennessee values to Washington and get Washington out of Tennessee.